Deb's Corner, welcome back. And if you're new, welcome. Thanks for joining me. This is the second video in the Puzzled Birds series. This is just a little project that I'm working on. I started with a puzzle, and my puzzle looked like this, which I thought was really pretty. Put it together first, which was fun. And there are 17 different birds on here. So once I had the whole puzzle put together, then I went in and extracted each of the birds, keeping them as, kind of as intact as I could, and glued pieces together. And so this is kind of an example of the puzzle pieces glued together. Next, I went in and I just took black gesso and I lined the edge with a small brush, not worrying about if I got some black up on the top of the puzzle pieces. That'll all blend in later. So I just edged them. I did that for a couple reasons. For one, it adds a little more depth to the puzzle piece, but it also helps to seal, puzzles are created with a bunch of layers, right? And the very top layer is where your image is, and it's really just a thin sheet of paper, adhered to these other layers. And so that'll help seal it a little bit. Next, I went in and I decided I wanted even a little more definition to the edges. And this is an example where I went in with some StazOn inks. Let's see, I think I used two different ones. This is Ganache, and this is Spiced Chai, and they're both browns. One is almost a black brown. And I went in on the edges and just inked. You can kind of see there through here, not worrying about it being even or getting every single puzzle piece touched. There's some up here where, the dips and stuff, there's not really much, which is fine. This is just gonna do what I want. And so this now is ready to, what I'm gonna do is spray a coat of sealant on this, probably a matte sealant, again, just to protect it. Just give it that extra protection, but this is ready then to do that. I just need to go in and ink all of the pieces because I haven't done that yet. I just decided to do that. So I just added another step to my process for myself. Next up, I have these boards. I went in, after I'd glued the puzzle pieces together, I figured out what size boards, and these are cradled wood boards. You can kind of see the back here of this one that's colored. It's nice and sloppy. And I put texture on them. I used a bunch of different textures, and that's what I did in the last video. And then I went over each board with a light layer of white gesso. So they're pretty much solid white. You can see where the wood is coming through in the background. If I come up close, you can see some of the texture coming through. And I just, no rhyme or reason, just sort of played. And so now where I am is I'm going to color the background of each of these boards, which is what these two are. This one I'm not, as thrilled with. I got a little too much white in it. I may come back and do a little bit more playing on that one, but you can see that it's just a random, I'm using the same colors on all the board. It's dark. My birds are light. Imagine now, let's see, let's put him this way. Imagine this guy now on this board. And he has collage fabrics, some slow stitching on the fabrics, some rust pieces and metal pieces, and just kind of this cluster that goes with him that comes into the different puzzle pieces that's on the board. That's where my head is anyway. That's where I'm headed. We'll see. But inking, putting the black gesso and the ink on the edge of these helps to blend the puzzle piece sort of into the background a little bit. I don't know if you can kind of see how that's beginning to just now move into the background. And so that's where I'm headed. So today, what I thought I would do is, and then once I get, let's see, let me back up. Once I get all of my boards colored, then I will also seal those. So once I have the birds completely inked, gessoed, inked, sealed, and all of the boards colored and sealed, then I'll come back and put the pieces together. And then it is sort of like putting another puzzle together. Just creating these fun little collages on these 17 different boards. So that's the plan. That's the project. Today I thought I would show you what I'm doing to color. I started with my 8x8 boards. Those are sort of the biggest, I think. Yeah, they are. They're the biggest boards for the biggest birds. All my birds are on different size boards, so I'll have that negative space will be different sizes on all of them, which will be fun with the collage and pieces. The more space I have, I think the more challenging the clusters and the add-on pieces will become. But here's what I have pulled aside, my sort of the formula that I played with. First, I have liquid acrylic from Art Alchemy, Finnabar, Prima Marketing in Umber, probably my favorite color. And then I have the same thing in True Yellow. It sounds really bright. I'm not a yellow person, but you saw the boards. It gives that mustardy tone to the background. So True Yellow. And then I have, these are walnut ink crystals from Paper Artsy. I got them from Paper Artsy. This is Imagine on the side. Walnut ink crystals, fun to play with. And I'll show you, there's a couple different ways you can use these, but I'll show you how I'm using them. And then I have a soft pastel, just one in, let's see, what color is this? This is called Dark Sienna. I'm using this on the top, which is another reason why I'll seal each board before I move on, just to sort of smooth out some spots, just as a final touch. And then I have some gesso. This is colored gesso in cream, and it's a really thick gesso. I'm using this very lightly, very, very little. As a matter of fact, I think on one of the boards I didn't use it, and the other I did. Might not use as much of this, but I have it out here ready to go. And then a spray bottle of water. Lots of water going on here. So let me get this out of the way and clear this space off over here just a little bit. I got a mess all around me. So here's what I'm going to do to start. And this is sort of this is just like a formula that I came up with, and it's not fast. It takes, it takes a few minutes. I'm adding color and drying and adding color and drying and adding water, lots of water, moving it around, soaking up my water, and just really playing until I'm kind of happy with what's going on. Knowing also, of course, that, a large percentage of the background is going to be covered up, but that's okay. So what I've been doing is starting with Umber. And I'm just gonna, let's do this. I'm just gonna spritz the back of my background first, just to get a little bit of, just a little moisture on there. And now I'm just gonna drip some Umber in a couple spots. And this particular one is almost empty, but I do have another one. And just, randomly across the board, trying to get into all the areas. And now I'm going to spray some more. Now I'm gonna sort of hit my spray bottle directly on those blotches, and I'm not afraid of using the water and getting lots of water. And this darker color that I'm starting with, what I wanted to do is get down into those cracks, and I'm going to use my fingers a lot. This is a messy process, but basically I'm just going to rub now in some of these darker areas, and I might have to add some more, particularly on the pieces with crackle on them. I want that dark get down in those cracks. So I'm just gonna play, get dirty. This one has a lot of crackle on it. Okay, and then I'm just going to sort of move this around. Remember, there's a lot of water on here, which is okay. Let it drip and get some fun marks with the drips. Not looking for it to be even, and I'll even drip some off at this stage. And where I'm really heavy, I'll put some more water. Lots of water going on here. I'm just going to move this around. I'm not necessarily going to, but you see how that's hitting into that crack and that texture back there? That's what I want. I'm not necessarily going to dry between every layer, but I am going to, I'm gonna get some more down in here. I am gonna dry after I get done with this layer. Okay, just playing. Not trying to cover everything right now. I'm okay with white on the background. That won't be there for long. I'm just gonna move my board around, move those colors around, and that's where you start to get those fun swishes and stuff in the background. If it's too heavy in a spot, just hit it with a little bit more water and roll it some more. And when I'm good, which I think this is pretty good, I'm gonna go ahead and start drying this. I may not, like I said, I may not dry it all the way, but I'm also gonna use the heater to move this water that's sitting here on the top, which is colored water now. And I'm gonna use this heater to move it around a little bit to get into some places that I wanna get into. But now what I'm gonna do, the next step, is I'm gonna take my walnut crystals and I'm gonna sprinkle them around just in, you know, a few spaces. Doesn't take much. Just gonna sprinkle around and get some in the middle. And in some boards I may put more than other boards. It just kind of depends. These boards will all be the same but different. And now I'm gonna spray again. I love the color of the walnut crystals. Now I'm just gonna come in here with a brush and I'm just gonna sort of smoosh around the crystals to help dissolve them a little bit, just because I don't want great big blobs of crystals, and just sort of mess around here. I'm okay with blending the colors at this stage especially. So I'm just messing around. No rhyme or reason really much at this stage. Not worried about where this is going yet. Now I'm going to add a little bit more water. And I'm going to do the same thing where I move it around just a little bit, just to get some of that motion in there. Go ahead and drip that off. I've got a couple of those crystals that are still a little globby. I'm just gonna dab at some of them a little bit, dissolve them a little bit more. Now you can also use these crystals and just pre-dissolve them. I like the effect for this particular project anyway. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can use this product. Let's let that drip down a little. Let's let that drip down a little. At this stage, I think what I'm going to do is get it pretty dry. So here we go. I want to get this darker color on my edges. So I'm just turning it around so that kind of happens. There we go. Some pretty, I don't know, I would call them maybe sort of striations in the background there. So now I'm going to hit this with the dryer pretty well. Okay, good enough. All right, the next thing I'm gonna do is put a wash of this true yellow on top of it. So, and now I'm just gonna put a wash on it. And again, remember, these dry differently than when they're wet. So just get a nice wash all the way across. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be even, and now I'm gonna add my water. And now I'm gonna do the same thing that I did. Just sort of move this around a little bit. And now what I'm gonna do is take a towel. I'm just gonna blot some of this up. Oh, intruders. Just gonna blot some of this up sort of randomly. Okay, so almost dry. And while I think this mustardy kind of color is gorgeous, it's a little too yellow for me. So I decided to go back over this one more time with some of the walnut crystals. And so I'm just going to hit a couple of spots again with the walnut crystals. Not heavy, you know, just light, very little, just kind of all the way around the board. And then I'm going to come back in here. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with my water. So now we're on what, the fourth layer, fifth layer. You just keep playing, keep going until this gets where you want it to be. Same thing, I'm going to use my brush again to dissolve some of those crystals. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing, add a little bit more water. And just do some rolling around. If I see spots that are particularly bothersome, you know, a little too fat, I'm just going to smoosh them around with my fingers. I think that's pretty. Okay, so I'm going to start drying again. So basically, and I said this before, you just keep playing until you've got it where you want it. Use whatever colors you want. There's not a right or wrong. You could have 20 layers on here when it was all said and done if you wanted to. Okay, and I'm going to stop there now and dry this. And the way I kept going, I got it pretty dark. But that's okay. At first I didn't want the background that dark, but then I decided actually I did. So I think it'll help make those birds just pop that much more. And I want to get those, I want those dark edges on those cracks. I love that. That's perfect. Just a lot going on, but remember, a lot of this is going to be covered. So I'm going to do this, get this nice and dry, and then I'll go back over it with perhaps a little bit of soft pastel just to sort of smooth out the edges just a little bit. Not a whole lot. One of the key things with mixing colors like this is to dry between layers. If you don't, you will end up with mud. Now, I know my color is very close to mud, and I don't always completely dry every layer, but I do get it pretty decently dry, just so that those colors don't keep mixing and create this muddy effect. Okay, the next thing I did is go through with the cream gesso and very, very lightly do some dry brushing. So not a lot, just a tiny bit. So I'm just going to get a little bit of on my brush from the lid here, tap it off, and now I just want to come in and where do I want to see some highlights? Perhaps right there. Kind of coming up on the edges and some of these edges here. Okay, and I like that. I like what's going on with just the light highlights on some of those, the texture on the background. I like the globbiness, I like the dripping, I like the dark and the light pieces kind of all going together, and it's just, right now it just looks like a little bit of a messy background. Next thing I'm going to do, but you know, this one is a little bit more, it has warmer tones than this one. Now this is completely dry, this sat overnight, and this hasn't set, but it does have a little bit more, but that's okay. That's okay. There's nothing that says that each one of these has to be identical. As a matter of fact, I don't want them identical. All right, the last step I took was to take my soft pastel and this, what did I say? It's dark sienna. It just happens to be one of my darker browns. And I'm just gonna look at this and where especially like my corners and some of my edges, I'm just gonna do a little bit of scribbling. And what I'm doing is just softening up that spot just a little bit. There we go. Creating an edge to the piece. And I will edge it with black when it's completely done, probably. I don't know that for sure. You can kind of see how that begins to just tie the edge color in a little bit. I don't know how else to describe it. Just scribble and squish around. There we go. See? Does that make sense? And I'm just going to go all the way around, not hitting every single spot, just some of those white that I did is getting covered up. Not hitting every single spot. Softening that edge up just a little bit so it's not so harsh. I think that's what I'm doing anyway. There we go. And then if there's any spots inside the piece where the color is too dark or not quite right, in my case perhaps too yellow, I may kind of come over here and do a little scribbling and then smooth that out a little bit. Take some of that yellow down just a tiny bit. And I'm not making drastic changes. They're very subtle. But again, just playing. There we go. I think that that's pretty good. And now when I think about with a bird sitting on here, I'll take my blue bird. You know, now we're beginning to see how the background's going to play with the bird on there and how it's going to blend in. Now because this board has a little bit more yellow in it, I may use, let's see if I can find one, depending on sizes. There might be a bird on here that kind of lends itself better to that color palette. But I am using the same general formula on all of my boards, even though they'll all look very different. Okay, the next thing I'm doing, wiping off my finger just a little bit. It's messy. This is a messy, fun messy, but messy. Now I'm going to go in and I'm just going to put a coat of black gesso on the edges. And you want to come up right up to the edge, but don't worry if you get it on the top of your board. That's actually okay, and will be great in the long run, because at the very end, we'll go back through and we'll put some edging on around the image. Once we get everything on there, that's like the last step. Finish it off. So there you go. See, I got some on the top. That's actually good. That's what I want. You can use black paint as well. You don't have to use gesso, but so there we go. That board is done. You can see I got some black on the top here on this edge. Perfect, great, no problem whatsoever. Not worried about that at this stage. Because like I said, later on, we will be blending that and creating an edge on the top of the board. So that's it. So this one, I'll have favorites, but you can see this one has a little less yellow. This one is a little more yellow. little darker overall, I think. When it completely dries, it may, you know, it'll lighten up. But then a couple things. I'll either go back in and lighten it even more if I feel I need to, or I'll make sure whatever bird goes on this board just really works with that extra warmness that's in the background. But overall, I'm liking where these are going, and I'm going to continue. Thanks for watching me. Next step, let's see, will be after I get all of the boards colored and all of the birds finish inking around the edges, then I'll take the boards and the birds and I will spray them with a sealant, probably like a matte sealant, and then it'll be ready for assembly. So it'll probably be a couple weeks before I come back. I'm in no huge hurry here. I'm just going to take my time and play. And as I come back, you know, like I was working on this yesterday and this today, and they're different. That's great. Even though I'm using the same color palette, I probably put it in a slightly different order or something like that. And I'll continue to do that every time I come back to the table. They'll be slightly different, which is perfect and what I want. So yeah, more to come. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.